Hey everyone, welcome to First Tuesdays with Heart. It is Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. First Tuesdays is sponsored by the Heart Peer Support Team in connection with the Resiliency and Justice Center in Las Vegas. Heart stands for Healing, Empowering, and Rebuilding Together. We're peer support for anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. So, real quick, I know we have some new people. Would love to introduce you to our Heart team. Alice, who was just talking, is a licensed professional counselor, and she's also a certified professional coach. She is a co-director of Heart, and she facilitates the Route 91 and UNLV support groups. Jackie, who's on here somewhere, is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is the behavioral health program coordinator for the Resiliency and Justice Center. She's one of our original heart coaches, and she still is actually one of our heart coaches. And she is the facilitator for the Route 91 support group in the evenings and the Continuing the Conversation with Heart group. I'm Jill Winter. I'm the co-director of Heart. I am a Route 91 survivor. I assist Alice with the UNLV support group and also Jackie with the Continuing the Conversation with Heart support group. So we love to start with kind of a meme, kind of something oftentimes lighthearted. And this is actually a sign that I saw many years ago. I'm one of those people who never goes home for the holidays because it's too chaotic and it's not worth my energy. And I saw this, I was shopping at Nordstrom's probably 20 years ago, and I was home for the holidays and therapy by New Year's. I bought the sign, I sent a picture to my dad, and I'm like, this is exactly why I don't go home for the holidays. And I bring that out every year still to this day. So we just thought we'd share that one with you. So tonight I am absolutely thrilled to introduce Molly Maurer. As I mentioned early in the program, Molly and I met in March of 2025. We were part of the very first Triumph Over Tragedy program through Onsite, and I had the honor of meeting her there and then working with her throughout the years. Molly is a survivor of both the Route 91 and borderline incidents. Through her own healing journey, she discovered the power of connection and now works as a peer support specialist and consultant, helping organizations build trauma-informed and survivor-centered programs. Ma is a passionate advocate for peer support and for those affected by mass violence. She uses her experience to create spaces of understanding, resilience, and hope. Over the past few years, she's had the honor of sharing her story and insights as a keynote speaker across the country, reminding others that healing is possible when we walk through it together. So, with that, Molly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
What an introduction. Thank you so much. All right. I am super honored to be here, obviously. And we worked a little bit with in a different peer support program. So I have a soft spot for the heart program and Jill and Alice and Jackie. And I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to kind of share some tips and tricks is what I'm hoping for, right? It's the holiday season. I think that was a brilliant sign. What a perfect, I'm like, sometimes the holidays can be happy. For some of us, they're not. So I just kind of wanted to talk about how we can navigate through the season, with kind of the focus being taking care of our mental well-being while we do that. Also, I apologize if this is distracting. I am trying not to move, but I'm in a swivel chair. So I'm doing my best. I really apologize. I can see myself and I'm like, oh no. Um, so we know that sometimes the holidays can be challenging. So I hope if you take anything away from this, maybe some tips or even just reminders that you can kind of use to guide yourself through the holidays. But everything we talk about today are good things to use even past the holidays in your day-to-day life. So this is just a little bit geared more towards the holiday, but I hope you take them beyond as well. So we're going to talk about identifying things that activate us. Knowing this ahead of time can really help set ourselves up for success as we kind of navigate gatherings, larger crowds, busier schedules, all of those things that kind of come with the holiday season. I think this is a good time too because we're after Thanksgiving, but before kind of Christmas, Hanukkah, all of those things. And we're past Black Friday, but haven't quite, reached the extent of the end of the Christmas shopping. In my professional life, I work with Autism Society of Ventura County out where I live, and we've been asked to host some sensory friendly rooms at malls because they just see how people are very overwhelmed and activated, and the kids are, melting down and screaming, and there's so much going on during all that holiday shopping. So it's an interesting dynamic for me to be in this professional setting where we're basically setting up little sensory peer support rooms for the shoppers while they're doing their holiday shopping. So this was a great date for this to be. So we're kind of right in the middle. But kind of knowing what activates us if we know those larger crowds or anything like that, knowing that ahead of time can kind of help us get through these times. We're going to talk about some grounding exercises, some breathing exercises. I'll say for me, breathing tools and exercises have been extremely helpful when I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I can kind of feel my body reacting and my brain hasn't quite caught up, but my body is definitely feeling it. So I'm big on breathing exercises. We'll talk about boundaries, things that we can do to make sure that we feel safe and supported. We'll talk about how to communicate our needs to others so we can have clear communication. That can always be kind of tough around family dynamics and the holiday season. We'll talk about redefining what traditions look like, maybe keeping traditions that we have, or if we want to change some moving forward.
Almost done. Get around.
We'll talk about what our values are and how we can honor those. And for me, arguably the most important aspect is kind of self-care. So taking care of ourselves. So we'll go over some ways that we can do that even when we do have busier schedules. And then we'll wrap up with some ways that you can connect us to there it is, some ways that you guys can connect to support and some resources that you can take with you if you need them as well. And I have a couple spots for sharing, like Jill had mentioned before, if you want to throw your questions in the chat, but I do have a couple stopping points, so just to be aware of. I went with for this one, I went with the not so happy holidays, very on theme for your happy, holidays and then in therapy by by New Year's, because it's not always the most fun time for people. Especially people who have experienced a trauma, and for particular this group being mass violence, the holidays can be really hard. So just acknowledging that, and kind of if you're experiencing a Remembrance Day, or some of us call them traumaversaries, around the holidays can be especially hard to walk through. If you've experienced loss during the holidays, that can be really hard. Or even just having those family gatherings where you did experience loss and those people aren't here anymore. So just acknowledging that those can be some difficult times that we're kind of walking into now. Um, I mentioned it, holiday lights, loud expected noises, challenging family dynamics, the inevitable, the how are you doing questions, or the classic, you're still upset about that. Aren't you over that? Why aren't you over that? It's been X amount of years. You need to get over it. And you'd think, and I saw in the chat that we're all kind of ranging on how far out we are from our incidents. And I saw somebody was like in the 90s, I think it was. And I'm 7 and 8 years out from mine, and I feel like it's been such a long time, and I still get those questions. So I cannot even imagine how frustrating it is to be 10 plus years and, still kind of navigating those conversations. So I want to, I empathize with that. And all of those things can kind of make it a little bit harder as we're meeting with groups, people who aren't really respectful of our experiences. So just kind of want to be aware of that. So if you're willing to share, if you want to throw it in the chat, or I don't know if you guys are allowing unmuting or whatever the parameters are, but if anybody has like a common hardest part of the holidays that they're kind of anticipating.
If we unmute, I was just going to say, I can't type that fast. I was going to say, definitely, like you said, that catching up kind of like, what have you been up to, whatever, or like just that feeling of the not misunderstand, or yeah, misunderstand, or just, exactly like you said, aren't you over it, or hasn't your life moved on since, or like, whether or not that's directly said like that, it's that implication of like, I don't know, like life moves on and why are you, why did this affect your life so much, basically? That's like the sort of crux of the hardest part for me.
Yeah, I will say too, the how are you doing question, and you mentioned it, is like sometimes the words how are you doing aren't inherently judgmental, but it's the way, it's the delivery of like the, oh, the kind of woe is me. Or I don't know, I have experienced when people find out what my mass violence experience is, there's like the, oh my, it's that shock factor, and then the response that you almost have to take care of them after. You're kind of responsible for what their reaction is to your experience. So that can definitely be very frustrating.
Yeah, that's something I find really challenging with like making new friends or when I open up about this, exactly like you said. It's like some people like can't process or can't handle, whatever it is. I understand, it's a difficult thing, it's hard to pick
Yeah.
exactly like you said, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I agree with you. I think that's for a lot of people, it's the how are you? And everybody wants to hear that you're fine.
Hmm.
And it's the why aren't you over it yet? I can't believe you're still struggling. We had one person put in the family bullshit and drama.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's a big one for me. That's why I do not go home for the holidays. Not worth it. Being asked to clean up the day when I already have low energy. And that's something to remember is, a lot of times you have to psych yourself up for
Mhm.
family meals, and that's hard.
Yeah.
We put the Oxford High School Remembrance was just on Sunday. So
Yeah.
they're struggling over there. The weather, the darkness, it's a lot and it's heavy. Absolutely. It's,
Mhm.
this getting dark early, I don't think helps many. And then you add the holidays on top of your remembrance with the anniversary effect. That's a lot to be taking on.
It
So
is.
please definitely make sure you're taking care of yourself. The traumaversary with the death of a loved one, busier schedules and unwanted questions, and then missing what they used to have and no one to spend the holidays with. That's all. Those are very real feelings.
Those are all really tough things. And that's kind of, which is why I'm glad we did, we're talking about this right now. So and we're going to talk about um, kind of all of those aspects, the time commitment, the emotional capacity, all of those things. So hopefully we can give you guys some tips for that. But it is really tough. And a lot of times, and not for everybody. I love my family. I love some of my family. It's not for everybody, but a lot of times the family dynamic or the friends or those gatherings are really what just sucks everything out of you. And you might be able to kind of hold it together for that hour or 2 hours, but then it's after or the day after, and you're almost like hungover. You have like an emotional hangover from these events. So just being aware of that and preparing ahead of time will hopefully kind of mitigate some of that.
Molly, I'm going to add another one. The Drake Diner remembrance was 11/29, so literally the day before Oxford High School. So she agrees with being cold and Thanksgiving, etc., being activating.
Yeah.
And another thing that to me I don't like with the holidays is the small talk. You have to be around a bunch of people you barely know. You have to, the small talk is just, I don't need it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, sometimes that's activating and that's not helpful too. So, anybody out? I'm gonna move to the next. All right. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so as we're talking about these kind of activating situations, and for me, my body reacts a lot to it, and my brain might feel like it's okay, but I can definitely feel the increased heart rate. My hands are kind of sweating, or my hands are cold, but my body is hot, or my head starts it. I feel it a lot where like my neck up starts to get really hot. And I've worked on enough of myself and learned enough of myself now that I know that those are my points where I'm like, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed, I'm getting upset, I'm getting anxious, any of those things. So these are some grounding exercises that you can do kind of in the moment. And this box breathing one, you can either, and you can find it on Google or you can take a picture of this image, but even having an image of it on your phone can be helpful. And you can even guide your finger across as you do it to kind of have something tangible to stay focused. And so you're kind of focusing on an activity rather than sometimes when you're trying to do breathing exercises or meditate, your mind is like fluttering off into all the things that you're worried about. So this can be a tangible exercise that you can do as well. And, or, you know, if you want to print it out on a piece of paper and kind of carry it around with you. So you can inhale for 4 seconds, and that's a true 4 seconds, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, not a quick one. So real 4 seconds. And you're breathing in, and then you're holding, and then you're exhaling, and then you're holding. I tend to do this until I feel better, or I give it a solid, 30 seconds, 45 seconds to kind of really set yourself back up, and it brings everything back to the present so you can be in your body and you're not floating around. And then the breathing kind of gives your mind something to focus on rather than focusing on something if you're getting overwhelmed or activated by anything. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method can be used. This is a good one for senses. So if you're really feeling out of your body, and I don't know if I'm sure I'm not the only person, but sometimes when you're really activated and you're like, I feel like I'm watching a movie, like I'm watching myself in a movie. My feet can't feel the ground, my hands, I'm really just dysregulated. This is a great one for that. And you can almost do it anywhere. And typically it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. As long as you keep this see, touch, hear, smell, taste, you can kind of alternate the numbers for what is accessible to you in that time. Taste is always hard because you're like, how many things can I? But if you're somewhere where you're like, well, I can put this sweet candy. I know sometimes sour candies kind of trip your system into coming back to. So if you're like, okay, well, I taste nothing. Now I taste sour. Now I taste my water. But just kind of focusing on that can help you bring yourself back. And it's a really good opportunity for you to get grounded back in your body, plant your feet on the ground. I'm a huge advocate for bare feet. If you can kind of get it on some grass or some dirt or just any ground where you're fully flat, so your body can just kind of reconnect and bring you back to the present. And then speaking out loud, things that are real and true can really help us stay present in the moment. It's tough to get lost in those what if feelings when you're a little bit too far gone and you're kind of already spiraling, for lack of a better term. Just noting where you are, who you're with, that in that moment you are safe. And this is something that I struggle with. I have the experience of back-to-back mass violence within a year of each other, which, as we've gone through our healing journeys, a year is really not that long. So kind of, I really was still pretty fresh in the first one when the second one happened. So something that I really, really, and I do still struggle with this, but I have a lot of tools in my toolbox to help me with that. But the I am safe aspect, it can be really, really tough because we were all safe and then very quickly we weren't. And for me, I don't want to speak for anybody, so like, but I can promise you I'm not the only one. For me, I felt safe when I was safe, and then all of a sudden I wasn't, and it's very confusing because I was in a safe space, I was in a place I've been before, all of those things. So for what I focus on for this is that I'm safe right now. In this moment, right now, I am safe. Nothing is going on. There is no violence. For me, when people scream or run is, obviously activating for me. So sometimes I like to look around and be like, everyone else is calm. There's nothing going on. You know, I know that this is a temporary feeling. I know that I'm feeling this way because I'm in a crowded mall in the middle of holiday shopping, the music is on, I'm cold or I'm hot, or the smells, you walk by Bath and Body Works and you're smashed with like 50 different body sprays and the candles and everything. So just kind of acknowledging that and validating, I feel like this because of my experience, and that is okay. This is going to stop. This is not going to be forever. This feeling is going to pass. And then, like I said, kind of naming if you're with somebody, I'm with Jill. Jill is standing right here. I can touch Jill. Jill is real. Jill is safe. All of those things can kind of just help us not get stuck in the what if feelings that can kind of often come up with that. All right, this can be a tough one. Don't we love boundaries, right? Everyone's favorite thing to do, set boundaries. And as we're all speaking about our loving families, that can be especially difficult with families. I would say this is probably the most challenging aspect that I come across when I'm supporting people. So it was important for me to kind of add this in there. But these are just a few ways that we can set boundaries throughout the holidays to keep us safe, supported, and feeling comfortable. So choosing what gatherings or environments that feel safe to us and skipping the ones that don't. Jill chooses not to go home for the holidays because she knows. So being aware of that and making that choice, huge. Limiting the time that you choose to spend in places, that can I have control issues. So that helps me with like making me feel like I'm more in control of my circumstances. Going into it knowing that I'm going to skip dinner, but I'm going to join for dessert. Or, hey, I'm going to set a timer. It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to set a timer at 7 o'clock. I'm leaving. That's enough for me. I said my hellos, the pleasantries, and my 1 hour window is about all I can emotionally handle, without having that emotional hangover and the blowback, after. So limiting your time, that can help you feel less overwhelmed. Now we have the beauty of Zoom. So maybe even looking into a virtual option rather than attending in person, seeing if they can just prop you up on a computer screen and then you have the option to just leave, or you can have your camera off or anything like that. Social boundaries are hard for me because I have FOMO, fear of missing out. And I always am like, I want to do this because I don't want to miss out on it. And then I do the thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so overwhelmed. If one more person touches me, I'm going to freak out. If one more person small talks me, I'm going to freak out. But you don't want to miss out on the activity. So Zoom is a virtual option is great. If that's something you feel comfortable with. And this one is controversial, but maybe choosing to host in your space rather than traveling. If traveling is overwhelming for you and you feel comfortable hosting in a safe space for you, maybe that's an option. And really, ultimately, it's important to protect your peace and your emotional energy. And that's where, the having to clean after you've hosted, you're cleaning, you're doing all these things, and you're just spent. So really paying attention to your emotional energy and stay with me, doing your best to avoid arguments about what you're choosing to do and the boundaries that you're choosing to set. And a good way to do that is choosing to surround yourself with people who support you and respect you and maybe even understand your experience, and in this day and age, mass violence is becoming a more common experience. So I know we're not all going to walk into a room and everyone understands our experience, but maybe just trying to the family members that do respect you and do understand and don't hit you with those questions, maybe spending a little bit more time with them, skipping the other ones that, you don't really feel too comfortable with. And then these are some ways that we can communicate our needs as we're having these conversations with setting boundaries, really thinking about your emotional, physical, your time, and your social needs. And these are just some statements that you can use to set those boundaries. I'd prefer not to be hugged. I'm laughing because we had someone that joined our retreat as well at onsite that had, we all had stickers of like, yes, you can hug me, colors of like, yes, you can hug me, ask first, or like, please don't touch me. And I think we were all like, green, yeah, well, give us all the hugs. And we had one that was like, please don't touch me. And that was new for me. And I was like, okay. So just having that conversation ahead of time and just being like, hey, I'm a little touched out. I'm not really doing hugs today, or like I'll come to you if I want a little extra love. I'm skipping the holiday party this time. I'm going to focus on rest and family time. I'm going to attend the smaller gatherings. Here's your emotional boundaries with like the, hey, how are you doing? Why aren't you over it? Or the new friend conversation when they all of a sudden put two and two together and realize what your experience is. And then they're like, oh my gosh, did you know anyone? Did you get injured? Yada, yada, yada. What was it like? All of those questions. So just being really open and upfront about it. Hey, I'm not really ready to talk about that. I really want to focus on the holidays and I really want to focus on this gathering. I really want to focus on the family, yada, yada, yada. When I'm ready to talk about that, I would be more than willing to have a conversation with you, but I'm not really interested in talking about that right now. It's kind of a good place that you could go. And then the time boundaries, I'll be staying for dinner, but I'm leaving after dessert or I'm leaving before dessert, kind of whatever parameters work best for you. And if you feel comfortable, throw it in the chat, unmute. Are there any particular events this year that you're anticipating that you'll need to have these conversations, or you're anticipating needing to communicate your needs to other people? We'll give everyone a minute, or Jill, you let me know if we're moving on.
Think, well, if anybody's going to comment, but I just want to emphasize that it is absolutely okay to tell people that you don't want to talk about it. The other thing that you could do is if you know that there might be that conversation might come up, if you are okay talking about it but don't want to get into it, just kind of have a very brief summary of what you want to say, kind of almost rehearsed.
Mhm.
And then you can say, okay, let's move on with that conversation. Because I actually ran into that at Thanksgiving. There were some people that I had not met who my friend had shared with them. And it's like, I could tell you a little bit, but I'm not going to have it talk. I don't want to talk about it for the whole night.
Mhm. That's great. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's actually a good, and if you know you're going to kind of have these conversations or you are anticipating them, kind of preparing almost like, you have a bit that you're like, yes, yes, I was there. I was present for that. I'm happy to be here today. Whatever. The beauty of it being your own experience is that there is no right or wrong dialogue that comes with that. So choosing what you're comfortable talking about, you can keep it quick and easy. Yes, I was there. I'm really happy to be here today. I'm so glad we gathered. I'm really looking forward to the food, whatever it is. Or if whatever parameters you want to set on that, and even writing them down ahead of time, kind of being willing, all right, this is what I'm willing to talk about. These are my hard boundaries. I do not want to talk about XYZ. These are my flexible boundaries. I'm willing to talk about XYZ, and then pre-planning it. Then if anybody kind of goes into the danger zone, having one of these outs as a statement of like, yeah, my go-to always is like, yep, I'm just really happy to be able to live to tell the tale, and I'm really appreciative to be here, and I'm really looking forward to blah 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 blah. And it kind of is like a social indicator of like, I'm done. We're gonna wrap this up. I'm kind of done talking about this one.
Molly, something I did, my daughter got married about 2 months after route. And I identified a couple people ahead of time. This is something to do with a large gathering for the holidays too. And just have them kind of, there could be a key word that you share with them. And if you happen to say that word with them around, they can take you off to the side, maybe help you with breathing, interrupt the
Mhm.
conversation, anything like that you might anticipate. So you kind of have that little bit of a safety blanket too.
Yeah.
Um, and then we had one person ask, can you ask them about not talking about certain things with me? And that's absolutely.
Yeah. And that's kind of part of being in control of your narrative is it is totally okay. And this is where kind of the aspect of surrounding yourself with people who respect you, it is totally okay to have somebody be like, "Oh my gosh," and then ask all those questions that you don't want to answer and your response being like, "You know what? I'm just not really comfortable talking about that. I really want to focus on whatever gathering it is, or I want to focus on this. I'm really here to spend time with family. I'm really here to spend time with friends." I just really that was a part of my life that already happened, and it's not the best part of my life, and I really just want to focus on the good, and I want to focus on me moving forward, and I don't really want to focus on this other part.
And that's another place that you can also, if you have, like, if you're around family that you trust or friends that you t trust, you can ask them if you hear this topic coming up, would you please help me divert the conversation?
Or maybe even if you know who's hosting, just flagging it to them before, hey, I really don't want to have to navigate these conversations this year. If you wouldn't mind letting people, or if there's people that always bring it up to you, hey, if you wouldn't mind letting Jill know, I don't really want to talk about this. Can you let her know ahead of time? Because she always talks to me about it. And I really don't want to deal with that this year. So would you mind reaching out to her and being like, hey, we're gonna keep the Route 91 conversations to a minimum or nothing.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, we're gonna choose not to talk about that this year.
Absolutely. We have another comment. I struggle with spending time with family after feeling ostracized and rejected because of the lack of understanding of how my life was affected, like a disappointment. It's just hard to go into those spaces where you don't feel cared about because you're not, quote, good enough, quote,
Mhm.
accomplished enough. Comparisons to other cousins with stable careers, getting married, having kids, etc.
Yeah, that I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I've been going to therapy once a week, sometimes twice, the occasional three times for the past 6 years, same therapist every week. I had that challenge as well. I almost said problem, and it's really not a problem. It's just an experience that you are not the only person that has as well. And full disclosure, getting vulnerable, I was unemployed for the last year, and I had my dream job, and I thought this was it, and I was moving up and doing all these things, and I just got the rug pulled right out from under me, and I spent the last year really struggling with identity and what am I doing, and this person is married, and this person, I'm in my 30s, so I'm like, I should be, all of these things. I wish I had a foolproof like plan to like, here's the magic, here's the secret sauce. For me though, really working on my values and what I want my person, what is Molly Maurer? What does Molly Maurer bring to the world? What is important for me to kind of exude? And what do I want people to look at me and be like, these are the important things in her life, and kind of figuring out what my new narrative was moving forward past my experience. Because I would say right after both incidents, it was like pretty high up that I had experienced mass violence. And that was a pretty high identity trait for me. And now it's much lower down, and it is a part of my life. It's always going to be a part of our lives. We can't ever, which is really frustrating, we can't ever take that away or get rid of that. But what we can do is focus on what we want to be moving forward and how we want to present ourselves. And this is also really hard. It doesn't matter where anybody is or what anybody's doing, because at the end of the day, at the end of the line, you have to be okay with yourself, and you are the only person that you have to, kind of, what is the word? Uh perform to. There's you have to answer to what you are doing. And if you are comfortable and happy where you're at, that is good enough for everyone else because it's good enough for you. And maybe focusing on setting goal. We're coming into the new year, setting goals for yourself, tangible goals that you can kind of achieve. I like to have a to-do list of goals, and it feels really good to cross stuff off when, starting really small and things that I can accomplish kind of helps me a little bit with my self-esteem. But that is a huge, huge thing of the kind of pressure, I guess I would say, the pressure of being around other people that you feel like are excelling more than you. But I think a lot of times you got to look inward on that. And a lot of times you kind of have to brush it off. You just have to be like, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm doing this, and that has to be enough.
I like to say as I've gotten older, and it took me years to realize this, if they're not paying my bills, their opinion does not matter to me.
Well,
So we have to be happy with ourselves. And we have one person put appease yourself first, and it's so true. And the one person added just like a cancer survivor, and another person chimed in because we have at least a couple of cancer survivors here. So yeah, that's a tough one around family.
it is really tough. And this is also controversial. In my entire healing journey, I would say I have become more selfish. And that word can sound a little harsh because it has kind of a negative connotation to it. But I will say, and maybe it's different for people who have experienced mass violence, sometimes you have to be selfish and understand that your mental well being and your personal needs have to take priority over whatever else is going on. If you don't feel good and you're not doing well, it's all downhill from there. I'm a parent as well, so like I cannot function as a parent if I don't feel good mentally, which is why that's why nothing will ever take precedence over my 1 hour a week that I sit on that couch. Sometimes I cry, sometimes I laugh, sometimes I'm doing EMDR, sometimes I'm talking about, whatever. I will never, ever, ever take that for granted. And that kind of brings me back for the week and sets me up for the week. I do it at the end of the week, sets me up for the weekend. And that's how I kind of walk through. And that's how I'm able to present things like this as well, because I focus on my mental health and my well being so that I have something to give. I want to be able to have something to give at the end of the day.
We have a comment. Sometimes selfishness is self-care, and that is so true. We've got to be protective of ourselves first because like Molly said, we're no good to anybody else if we don't take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. So be more selfish. That's my tagline for this. Be more selfish. All right, I see the time too, so I don't want to. Okay. Another common thing that I hear is that traditions are really hard to break, and that can be true. We don't always have to completely eliminate traditions. We can look at redefining traditions. We can look at being open to creating new ones. And kind of on that aspect of meeting new friends, maybe you create new traditions with the new friends that you meet. Or maybe you talk to your family and you're like, hey, this tradition is really emotionally draining for me. I don't like this tradition. This tradition brings up a lot of emotions for me. What do you think about XYZ? Could we maybe do this instead? And hopefully people are open to that. And if they're not, that's where you're choosing your time. Okay, well, I'm gonna skip this one, and instead I'm gonna do this instead. And then that is you're kind of creating your new tradition on that. And then a lot of times, kind of if you're changing traditions, it can feel like you're kind of letting go of the past, or you're not honoring the past if you have experienced a loss and that tradition is tied to the loss. That can be kind of hard, like you're forgetting or anything like that. So finding ways that you can honor those things and honor the past without holding on to all of the pain that can come along with it. Finding things that feel good that you can remember without having all of this weight with it. And really, at the end of the day, the important thing is that we feel safe and supported. And we all have to continue on a healing journey, and nobody has to come along with us. So that's where our selfish comes in, is we really need to make sure that we are feeling safe, which is a huge thing, supported, which is almost just as important, but a little tick down as we walk through it, and together. You can't do it alone, so do it together. Okay, so let's talk about values. So I look at values as things that are important to me. So kind of looking, these are just a few values. So looking at this list and maybe thinking about other things that you value for yourselves. You can make a mental note, you can put it in the chat, you can write it down, but think about kind of 3 or 4 things that you think makes up your core values and who you are as a person. And if you feel comfortable sharing. And then as you're doing that, just kind of looking at how you can implement these actions. These are some things that you can do throughout the holidays and after. We talked about limiting time at stressful gatherings, spending time with a few safe people, skipping the traditions. I liked the concept of giving, if volunteering, you can send notes, you can give people anonymous notes, soup kitchens. The holidays is like when all these volunteer opportunities come up too that you don't maybe necessarily think about throughout the year. And financially, we could all use more money, right? So maybe looking into volunteering your time or doing something that's a little more compassionate in lieu of gifts, if that feels more comfortable for you. And then just reiterating that we're going to set those firm boundaries around people who are activating, topics that are activating, and places that are activating.
So we have somebody dropped in creativity is one of the things she.
Great. That's great. I need to tap into that value a little more. I'm gonna take some tips. Creativity is going on. That's gonna be my value goal for 2026. Be more creative. And creativity is a great outlet in general too, when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling happy. That creativity, even just, grabbing a crayon or a marker or a color pencil and blank paper and just doodling around can be very, very relaxing. It can be cathartic, it can be healing. So doing any of those things. And then just to kind of go along with that, so when you're planning your events, kind of deciding what your schedule is going to look like, you can ask yourself these questions, making sure that you're staying true to your values while you're choosing which activities you're going to do, thinking about how these events are going to affect you emotionally after. So thinking about what your day is going to look like after. And ultimately, if you choose to do these, and we can plan ahead of time. And sometimes we get there and we think we're going to be okay, and then we feel overwhelmed. That's okay too. But maybe thinking about what your day looks like after. So if you're going to that all day family party, if you're like, I'm just going to do it. I don't want to miss out. I know it's going to be overwhelming. I know this. I know that. I'm going to set my boundaries. I'm going to avoid these conversations. I'm going to avoid arguing about it, but I am going to be emotionally exhausted. Set yourself up for success the next day. Don't plan any big activities. Don't do anything where you have to make any huge choices. Try to lounge, get a comfort show ready, get some comfort food, your comfort sweet treats, any of those things. Plan it ahead of time. So then when you wake up the next day and you're like, I feel like I got hit by a bus, you got your stuff locked in already, put your comfies on, and then you just cruise the rest of the day and kind of recoup from that.
So we had somebody else drop in, actually making boundaries and sticking to them is a goal for the holidays. And then somebody else made the comment, selfishness can be a positive boundary. And that is so true.
See, Jill's dog is like, I have no personal boundaries and you're going to listen to me.
Well,
See?
and she actually had to sit on the other one because he won't move and she wants to be next to me. So she set her boundaries.
She said, I need emotional connection right now and you're going to give it to
Yep.
me. And we love assertive boundaries. We love it. Very on brand. I can't ignore dog. I apologize. My ADHD, like I'm like fur. So how the event will affect you emotionally afterwards, and then kind of asking yourself if you're joining this, are you joining this event out of obligation, or do you really want to attend? Do you feel like you need to or you want to? And then just these kind of couple questions at the end, taking a minute to think about the questions. And then I'm gonna switch to this next slide because I have been yapping too long and we're running out of time. But if you want to just look at those questions as you're kind of planning your events. This is, I personally think, the most important part, taking care of ourselves. This is really important. And especially so during the holidays when we're talking about schedule changes, busier schedules, and the anticipation of being more activated. So understanding that healing isn't linear, this allows us to really give ourselves grace and kind of as we process and move through our healing journeys, acknowledging that not every day is going to be a good day. And there's no, I personally don't know that there's an end, where you're fully healed or fully over it or fully any of those things. So just understanding that this is a process and it is a journey, and with that comes highs and lows. Planning ahead can be helpful so we can avoid being surprised by activities if we're like, oh, I didn't know this was happening, kind of knowing where you're going to go, the people that you're going to interact with. So there's no, people aren't popping up out of nowhere and you're not prepared for that. This is a tough one. Doing our best to be kind to ourselves and avoiding judgmental or negative thoughts. So this can be really hard, but just being aware of the things that you're saying to yourself and how you're saying them and shifting them into positive thoughts, validating your feelings and acknowledging that, certain times and certain interactions, certain events are going to be tough and can be tough, but it's minimal. It's not forever. We can do it. And at the end, we can have our treat. We can watch our show. We can, have some type of, there's a light at the end of the tunnel for us. And then just trying to stick to your routine. This can also really regulate your emotions. I'm a big routine girl. It makes me feel safe, makes me feel supported, makes me feel like I'm kind of more in control of what's going on. Sometimes the holidays isn't, and if you have work off, that can throw your schedule off. I have a school age child, so they don't ever go to school during this time of year. So that is a whole thing. So and I love the extra time. I love the extra time. It is a different schedule. So just being aware of that and trying to stick to as much normalcy as you can. Okay, and then I wanted to bring back around because Jill, you mentioned kind of like pre-planning the people if you know you have a couple safe people. So I'm gonna skip really quick to creating a personal support plan. So this is where that person's gonna come in. So you're like, okay, I know that I have a really busy holiday. I know that I feel more activated during the holidays. Here's going to be my phone tree. I'm going to call Jill. And if Jill doesn't answer, I'm going to call Alice. And if Alice doesn't answer, I'm going to call Jackie. And having the people, having your kind of how it's going to go. Jill usually answers me and has a flexible schedule, but sometimes can't. Alice works a 9 to 5 and can't answer her phone during the day. And I know that. So I'm going to put her second. Jackie, blah 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 blah. So I'm gonna put her third, whatever the circumstances are. And then if you feel like I don't want to be a burden, I don't want to bother, having a conversation ahead of time, finding somebody who has a similar experience, finding somebody who understands what you're going through, using the heart peer support, joining a support group. I am an advocate for peer support. I think peer support is great. These groups where you're with other people who can identify with your experience and have a similar one, kind of that niche. Mass violence, although it is becoming more common, is still a very niche experience, and it's not. Trauma is trauma is trauma is trauma, and mass violence is a niche of that. So kind of finding some ways that you can connect with other people, having a conversation ahead of time. Hey, Jill, I tend to get really activated during the holidays. I know that I have family parties coming up. Would you be okay if I reached out to you if I was feeling overwhelmed? And then Jill can set a boundary of like, yeah, call me whenever, or hey, yeah, just send me a text before and then I'll let you know if I can call you. Or yes, I can't, I'm not going to answer your phone call after 6 p.m. That's my family time. That's my winding down time. And then kind of setting yourself up for success that way. In addition to people, you can say, I always like to have a self-care plan in place. So if I know I'm going to, public speaking is a little awkward, right? It's a little scary. I have a self-care routine in place for when I log off this call. I have my comfort meal. I have Grey's Anatomy queued up. I'm ready to go with what I'm going to put on comfies. I'm going to put on slippers because I'm going to have an emotional response after this. And I know that. So, kind of setting yourself up for that, people, activities. If you want to go for a walk, not if you're in the 20, 40 degree weather, walk around your house. If you have a walking pad, whatever that looks like. Calling a trusted friend. So, putting those trusted friends on your support plan. And I think trusted friend is just like a highlight because you want to make sure that the people that you're reaching out to when you are feeling activated, that you're going to get the response that you're looking for. Don't call the people that ask you all the questions that you don't want to answer. Don't call the people who are like, ugh, this again. Don't call the people who you've experienced those interactions with. And crisis support always. And I'm going to 988, we have our peer support groups, 988, you can call or text always. You can chat online. I wanted to just highlight domestic violence and DDH, which you can call or text DDH too. And I know there are Facebook groups. I could have put that on here. There's peer support groups on Facebook. There's crisis groups on Facebook that you can kind of message people all the time. We used to have a DDH one. We no longer have that. But there is one called Survivor Solidarity.
Survivors in Solidarity.
Survivors in Solidarity, ran by really great people, facilitated, kind of admin monitored by really great people. So if you don't want to get on, I don't even like being in doctor's appointments anymore. So if you don't want to get on the phone, texting, Facebook, online, utilizing that. The crisis support is really important before you're in a crisis. So please just don't wait until you're already you're just in this mindset where you can't grasp anything anymore. Your tools aren't working, your self-care is not working. Reach out before we get there.
And Molly, I'm going to interrupt real quick. For
Yes.
those who are not familiar with the Disaster Distress Helpline or the DDH, it was actually created for people impacted by natural and man-made disasters. So they are very skilled in working with people impacted by mass violence. And it is something that if you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's nobody you can call because the rest of us are asleep, you can call them and they can walk you through something. It doesn't have to be a crisis. The crisis could be, I can't go to sleep, or I have these intrusive thoughts as I'm trying to go to sleep. So I would definitely encourage you guys to take that number down if you don't have that one as well, because it's great to have that.
Thank you for flagging that. Yeah. We made it. That's my spiel. Thank you guys so much. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful. I hope the conversations were helpful. I wish us all a peaceful and calm holiday season. And that's, if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. I was like, I should put some contact info on there. But yeah, I'm a certified peer support specialist in the state of California. So if you have any questions about that, I'm always willing to. I've figured out this new consulting thing of people have been asking me questions on how to pursue that. So I'm always available for any questions you have.
And before we go on to the last couple of slides, does anybody have any other questions or comments from Molly? We have a couple that, thank you, great tips and reminders. One person had to pop up, said, thank you, everyone. Molly was amazing. And then somebody else, of course, my computer's freezing. Um, was saying that this was time I was just stressing up the holidays and was so happy when I saw this event was tonight. So grateful for you to putting this on.
Perfect. Perfect timing.
Oh, does anybody have any questions? And if you want to hang out, we have at the towards the end, I'm going to announce something else that Molly's doing with us in January.
Let me stop sharing so you can have your control back.
Thank you.
So, Jill, I did want to mention, I put it in the chat, but if anybody does need help finding a therapist, please email Ron Keenan at lacsn.org. He will help you find a trauma-informed therapist in your area. He's great to work with. And I really encourage you guys to make sure you have your counseling appointments set between now and spring, because what people tend to do is they tend to cancel thinking, okay, I'm just going to tough it out through the holidays and pick it up again. And then the therapist is booked or whatever. So please make sure that you get those counseling appointments booked now. It's part of that self-care routine, like Molly was talking about. Molly, I love it that you brought it in and you were so personal about, after this presenting to you guys, which where you're sharing from your heart, you're sharing from your experiences, there's going to be an emotional letdown. And I so appreciate your sharing that. So like having those counseling appointments is part of that personal like safety plan.
Yeah.
Also love the sour candy idea. Because I like to wear stuff with pockets in it when I'm around a family so that I can have something in my pocket that will help ground me in some way. But the sour candy thing or a cough drop or something like that, where somebody's asking you a question and you can be like, oh, and like you give them like 1 minute and you're pulling out your candy or pulling out your cough drop. If that gives you a minute to gain your composure and also grounds you. Oh, I mean, that's great. Thank you so much. Also love emotional hangover because, oh yeah, that's what it is. And speaking of emotional hangover, um, if you tend to like to celebrate with some sort of alcohol drink when you're with your family, just think about that ahead of time. Is that good for you in that setting? Okay. It's not a judgment on alcohol or anything. It's just, is it good for you? Sometimes it is. It can help you relax.
Yeah.
And other times it cannot be good because maybe your lips get too loose, so just consider it.
Sour candies can be a good alternative to the alcohol drink too, if it's a slippery slope for you. And when you're around family, alcohol turns into a few drinks. You could pop a sour candy, and that's one of my like less common
I love it.
in my pocket that I'm like, all right, sour. They don't do sour Skittles anymore anywhere. You gotta like really look for them, but those are the good ones because they're small and you can just pop them right in.
Love it.
So I'm going to add real quick to what Alice said, and then we did have a question. So Ron finding a therapist for us is a free benefit through the Resiliency Center for anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. I used him last spring because I needed to find a new therapist. And the nice thing is, as most of us know, so many therapists are not taking new clients. Ron does all that legwork for us because it can get really frustrating when you're hearing, no, sorry, new clients, no, sorry, new clients, no, sorry, don't take your insurance. Ron finds that all out for us. So it makes that so much easier. The one thing I will say is when he calls you back with the name of somebody, please don't wait to call them because they cannot hold the space for us. They might be able to hold it for a day, but we've had people like call back 2 weeks later and the therapist is not taking new clients. So, they can't hold that space. And Jackie, I'm going to ask this question before I go to you. So the question is invasive moments with an open house, like shouting up the stairway. How do you ask to limit the yelling?
I'll take this and then if anybody else has any, because I have something to say, but then if anybody else has any tips as well. This is a big one for me. The like that sudden kind, you're like, okay, why are you screaming? I would recommend the conversation ahead of time. And if we're talking about an open house, there's multiple people living there. If maybe everyone can come together for a conversation. Hey, when you guys yell up the stairwell, it's really activating for me. And it kind of takes me a while to kind of ground myself and get back to the present. If we could do our best to avoid the loud yelling, maybe you could text or walk up the stairs and address the person that you're looking for. That would really help me. And depending on family dynamics, and I'm not assuming anything, sometimes when I have challenging conversations with family members that are like, yeah, that's inconvenient for me, if you word it in a way that is almost like they can't. I word it in a way of like, hey, this is really upsetting to me. And what would be helpful for me is if we didn't yell up the stairway. That would really help me feel more grounded, feel more safe, feel more comfortable. And then it kind of puts them in a spot of like, if they say no, then they're kind of, not acknowledging your feelings, not acknowledging that it can be helpful for you, but just kind of making it a personalized conversation of like, this is affecting me and this would be really helpful. And I think we could all benefit from having a little, yes, less yelling in the house.
I was going to say that the texting instead. And also, if you happen to have Alexas in your house, like multiple ones, you can ask Alexa to make an announcement to everybody. And that way there's no yelling. And you kind of get the ding ding. So you have the notification that it's coming and it's in a nice calm voice.
Ask for walkie-talkies for the holidays.
There you go.
Have an upstairs walkie-talkie and a downstairs walkie-talkie.
There you go. Jackie, were you going to add something? You're muted.
Guys, sorry. Just in terms of calming the central nervous system, one of the things that I discovered through a class that I'm teaching is just rubbing your finger on your lips
Hmm.
because there are a tremendous amount of nerve endings in our lips. I figured out that's why kissing is so nice. But it's also true that if you just gently do this, first of all, no one's going to know what you're doing. Maybe they'll think you have chapped lips, but it really does calm you down, and it's something you can do anywhere. So that's all.
Let me add really quick, and I know really fast, because now that I work in a neurodivergent community, I have been introduced to many, many sensory things. There's textured stickers that you can stick on the back of your phone and you can rub, and they're kind of bumpy on one side. I don't know if you've heard of the ouchies, but they're like little things you can hold in your hands that have bumps on them and you can squeeze them. It doesn't break the skin or anything, but it gives you a little bit of pressure points on your hands. You can roll them in your hands. You can roll them on any of your, these are like something, nerve somethings, right? You could do it on there, on the back of your knees is a good one. Fidget spinners are great, but those are things that are all kind of smaller that you can keep in your pocket or something like that. I highly recommend those.
Stress balls.
Stress balls, yeah,
I have some
something.
smaller ones. Yeah, I have lots of those things sitting around. I have when your pants have the
Yeah, yeah.
drawstrings. They're really good to play with. Pens.
Yep, click
Oh,
pens.
yep. Yep. So lots of good things. All right, well, I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint real quick and finish up. Okay. So want to remind everybody that we do have two support groups a month that are open to anybody impacted by any mass violence incident. They're typically the third Tuesday at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, the fourth Thursday at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. However, the fourth Thursday is Christmas Day, so we will be doing the support group on the Monday of that week on December 22nd. So this is open to anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. It's facilitated by Jackie and myself, so we would encourage you guys. I know holidays can be crazy. This is a great place to be amongst others who do understand. There are lots of integrative services programs through the Resiliency Center that are free and available to anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. Molly mentioned, kind of scribbles, drawing. We had a meditative art therapy that I know several people on here have joined us for. It's a lot of fun, and I have a hard time drawing a stick figure. So it's just something, it's like Molly, I have ADHD. To me, I'd say like it quiets the ping pong balls in my brain, which is so nice to have. So that one is on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, via Zoom, so you can do it from anywhere. Super basic supplies, but also there's a meditation and mindfulness once a week. That's 30 minutes, and then once a month it's an hour. Once a month there is a trauma recovery yoga program on Saturdays. The only thing that is in person is the equine therapy demonstration. So if you happen to be visiting Vegas and they're doing a demonstration that particular time, please feel free to join as well. So if you'd like more information or to register, you go to the Resiliency and Justice Center's calendar. Um, short, quick look at the calendar. Anything that is not event specific is open to anyone impacted. So we'd encourage you to take a look at the calendar and join us. Additional support, if you'd like to be paired with a mentor, you can do that from the Resiliency Center website. Molly mentioned the disaster distress helpline. We have it here as well. The National Mass Violence Center has lots of wonderful information. They also have a virtual resiliency center, and the Transcend NMVC app was created for and by people impacted by mass violence. There are some other Transcend apps out there, so please make sure you put Transcend NMVC for National Mass Violence Center when you do your search. 988. If you aren't on our First Tuesdays with Heart Facebook page, we have some people that post some amazing inspirational things pretty often. So it's a good place to connect. And then if you like to cook, we do have a Cooking for Post-Traumatic Growth where share recipes. You can ask questions about cooking or gardening or whatever. We know that cooking is grounding. So our First Tuesdays next month is actually going to be, our speaker is Catherine Sherwenka, who is one of the sisters who does the meditation and mindfulness program through the Resiliency Center. She's also a globally recognized spiritual empowerment and meditation workshop facilitator. She'll be talking about inner peace coming home through meditation. And then to kick off the new year, Molly is going to be leading us in a vision board workshop. So if it's not already on the Resiliency Center calendar, I know Jared, who's our IT guy, has been out of town or out of the office for a couple days. It should be up there very soon. Just real quick, suggested supplies are pretty basic. I realize how expensive magazines are, and I happen to find a vision board bundle on Amazon that has all sorts of pictures. So instead of buying magazines, you could go to your library and see if they have used magazines. Oftentimes people will donate used magazines for this purpose. So it's truly just basic supplies. So we ask that you register for that on the Resiliency Center page as well. So we just want to thank everybody for joining us. I know that holidays are not always easy. People don't always understand where we are. So please know that you're not alone and there are people here who can support you. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Hope to see you for continuing the conversation, the support group, and then next month for First Tuesdays and for the vision board. Have a wonderful evening.
Have a good night.